Okay, so I'll just kind of go over housekeeping rules maybe. If so the members of the public, you're welcome to listen in. We will have a little bit of time at the end for commentary, but the meeting itself, commentary is limited to committee members initially. And we would ask you to please stay on mute, just to help with Zoom feedback, until we get to the point where we can chat a little more. And then the other thing is the agenda items are still the same, but we're gonna swap things around just a little bit. There is a very brief select board meeting happening at the same time as this meeting. And we'd love to give Susan Bates and potentially Stephen also an opportunity to jump in on the reopening part of the conversation. So John, if you're cool with it, I think we'll start with some of the grant updates and then save some of the reopening topics for a little bit later in the hopes that at least one of either Susan or Stephen can join us. Beth Williams, I see you there and I see Marcia. So I'm sure between the two of you can help fill us in. Okay, well, shall we begin? It is 4:03 p.m. So I will call this meeting to order. First of all, to get started, all of our committee members should have received the draft minutes from our May 27th meeting. Let's see, Ruth, we did have one small change in that there's only one more open position on the committee. And John, you had a small edit as well, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
I can't hear you, John.
Sorry, there was a typo on the second page. I'm sure it wasn't Ruth's fault. The word
No.
was missing at the end of the 5th paragraph, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. I
All right.
appreciate it.
So can I have a motion to approve the minutes with the edits included?
So moved.
Okay, seconded. Okay, Deborah, thank you for seconding. Committee members all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Well done, meeting rare. Okay, moving on. Status of additional committee nominations. Ramon, thank you for joining us on the meeting. I know we are all looking forward to having you join us just as soon as the townhouse opens and you can be sworn in. So thank you very much. That does leave one seat open. And I know that Susan had received a couple of names that were potentials. Were there any other names that the committee wanted to put forward? Or shall we just see how Susan does with the names that she has?
Well, let me ask, did everyone see that? I know that the name that Susan had mentioned to me was Tom Putnam from the museum.
Yes.
Susan's opinion was that we were a little light in the cultural and historic category, and that she thought Tom would be a good fit. I know Tom pretty well. I haven't actually worked with him on a committee, but have known him since he arrived at the museum. And I think he'd be a terrific addition. And if he was willing to make the time for it, I think it's well worth pursuing.
I agree. He would be a good fit.
Yeah. And then I did give Susan 2 other names in case for some reason it's a conflict for Tom or he's not able to do it. And that was Meg from A New Leaf and Jennifer from Joy Street. The thinking there was, a little bit more diversity of retail perspectives and also making sure that West Concord is well represented in the committee. So yes, Jane.
I missed the first name.
John, it's Tom. What's his
Tom?
No, Tom. I heard the of the retailers.
Oh, Meg from A New Leaf. Meg Gaudet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think we'll see how Susan does with Tom, and then she's got some backup names from there. So I think we're probably good now, right, with nominations. We'll wait to hear back from Susan at the next meeting. Yes?
Good.
Okay, great. Okay, Beth, can I ask you to give us a little synopsis of where we are with the HUD block grant application in the town?
Sure. So a few of you attended the public hearing, which was last Thursday. There was a lot of participants. Marcia took copious notes, and so did Jennifer. So I appreciate that you were both on the call as much as could be. The grant is due. The group grant, the 22 communities, is due on Friday. Our part is done, and from the date of submission, we shall hear in 2 weeks. So just to let everybody know, we submitted for $300,000 grant. It is dedicated to micro enterprises, and the application process is being spearheaded by MAPC and the town of Ashland. There are leads on the group on the regional project. We're in with Lexington and a lot of other towns. So far, the indication is it's going to be a lot of people vying for it. We had MAPC, Marcia was really great, and had MAPC look to see if they had any records on the amount of businesses under five or under in the town of Concord. And the number was staggering, way more than anybody, I think, probably in this group even could imagine. Like to the tune of 800, Marcia?
That's correct.
Yeah.
In the town of Concord alone, you're saying 800 micro businesses.
In the town of Concord alone. They had, it was downloaded from 2016 by the National American or North American Industrial Codes. And so it gave us the number of all the different businesses in those codes. And there were over 800 businesses in the town of Concord that have listed with the state as a business.
Wow.
So I think we won't have any problem dispersing that $300,000 based on that. And there has been a lot of talk about how we're going to market it. So once we get the grant, it'll go out through town news and notices, town website, MAPC. I will spread the news to Kate Carr to put out through the business community, as well as Jane to put out through the chamber. I'll put out an announcement. So we will do our best to make sure that everybody knows that those funds are now available. The application, from what I could understand from reading, is they're going to try to make it as very simple as can be. There are, as Jennifer pointed out, a lot of parts to it. You do have to submit tax returns and proof and paperwork to go along with it. So the application hopefully won't be onerous. It'll just be a lot of gathering of paperwork. So that's in, or will be in on Friday. So we're excited. Hopefully we'll get that and be able to turn the money around to businesses. They don't recommend doing a first come, first serve, which I'm a big fan of. So the committee that does decide on the grants will decide them based on their merit, not necessarily who comes in first, to be able to give sort of an equal opportunity to everybody that participates.
Beth, what is the expected timeline between the grants being released for use and the ability to disperse funds to successful applicants?
Marcia, do you know that answer?
Unfortunately, I don't, but we're partnering with the Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation, and they have expertise in distributing small grants and loans to different businesses. Their focus is solely on small business. So I think that they are a good partner and will help expedite this program for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the reasons we chose to go with the group application is because we have this engine already designed in front of us, so that we can get the money into the hands of businesses sooner without having to then form a new committee within the town and go through the process ourselves.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I just thought I had heard one of the presenters say that they thought their sort of best case scenario was sometime in August, because if the decision's being made end of June, and then you've got an RFP and an application process. So just in terms of the businesses, we're probably talking at least another 1 to 2 rent cycles before they really know what's happening, right?
I think that's probably accurate.
Yeah, okay.
And what's the scale of, remind me, the scale of the grants that we're imagining?
They can apply for up to $10,000 each.
For anything that isn't covered by another grant that they may have received. So if they had something where they needed to get PPE, or they wanted to supplement something or get assistance in getting an online presence, or boost their web presence, those would qualify.
Okay, good.
Great. Thank you, Beth.
Like,
Okay, and then as a counterpoint to that, the Concord Together group has partnered with the Concord Carlisle Community Chest to put together a fund that anyone can contribute to. It is a tax-deductible donation. Jennifer, do you want to give us a little overview of the fund and how it works and where we are?
Sure, happy to do that. Hi, everyone. Throughout this process, it's sort of come about that there's a lot of community support for wanting businesses to, get back up and running and be on their feet. And so we decided, sort of the nature of what the Community Chest does in helping nonprofits with support during the year, we would want to try and help our business community in that way as well, because we're all fabric of this community. So we have set up a Concord Together Business Fund that is a little bit, I'd say a little bit more flexible in determining the eligibility and grant process than maybe the state grant that you have in process right now. And this would probably, the smaller programs maybe in the $3,000 to $5,000 grant range. But again, to businesses that are operating here in town, for anything towards rent abatement, utilities, PPE, physical reconfiguration of storefronts. There's a host of other areas where they can get support. And there will be a small review committee of some diverse folks on it to review these proposals, and can be turned around pretty quickly because of the flexibility that we have with that. Right now, the grant is not quite available because we're still in a fundraising stage. We are at a really great point, though. We have almost $19,000 in for gifts, and we also received just recently a match gift of another $15,000. So we are hopeful that will get us to a really nice point in the near future. There was some great publicity that went out in the paper last week and this week, and we're doing more marketing around that for people to know that Concord Together is there, and the Community Chest is here supporting and raising funds, and so hopefully the whole community will know to be able to contribute to this. So that's where we stand at the moment, and certainly encourage you to let other people know about it and the program.
That's great. Yeah, Jennifer, I think Rob from the paper said that there would be an article this week highlighting it. So great.
Yeah, Jennifer, I want to say thank you to the Community Chest. It's a great initiative and great you guys to step forward. I do want to say, just maybe say what's obvious to everybody, but if we have 800 micro businesses, I don't know how many kind of not so micro businesses we have, but so in the retail and restaurant community, I'm not sure how many businesses we have, probably a couple hundred, maybe more. But it's important that if we're really going to be able to move the needle, we need to be able to move quickly and with some scale. And so, Jennifer, if you're 19,000 plus the 15,000 and that gets matched, gets you to almost 50,000, that's awesome. But in terms of the scale of the challenge we're facing, I think we need to think hard about how we can take that from 50,000 to 500,000 or higher, because I think that's the scale that we need to really make a difference, for the retailers, unless there's some way to really kind of target only those that are feeling the most pain. And I think that's kind of hard to do. So I guess just for everyone's information, this is a topic that comes up in the Concord Together calls. And this is what Stephen has referred to as the public-private partnership opportunity here, where we're trying to leverage, the private sector to raise money to come to the aid of the businesses. But we need creative ideas from everybody to help us really kind of go from 50 to a much higher number. So I just wanted to make that point that it's a wonderful initiative of you guys, but we got to get kind of more hands on deck and more dollars flowing.
Yeah.
There are, in terms of numbers, the other number I have now is there are 45 businesses that are food related that have food permits with the town. So that gives us another number to go off of.
Mhm.
45.
Yeah.
Jane, you had a comment?
Jennifer, I just wanted to let you know and everyone else that I am including the announcement of the fund in an email blast going out tomorrow. I used some of the information from the press release and then I made a link to your website.
That's awesome. Thank you. So John, you raise an excellent point in that it's wonderful to see these initiatives happening, that there are potential grants out there that, you know, certainly hope the community will respond to the chest fund. But with so many people in trouble, I think, you know, it's pretty public now that there are at least 3 businesses that are gone now. Lost Colonial Stores, Winston Flowers, and I believe Gordon Optical is also gone. And, you know, there's more coming. So this committee is tasked, it's strange, our original task was simply how to help our retail and tourism communities thrive, but of course we have a new challenge now. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes turning our attention back to a proposal that we heard from Henry Dane at our last call. That was a bit of an outside the box thought of tapping into the fact that we do have a state of emergency to potentially be able to access loans from the municipality out to the businesses. And this part of the conversation is for the committee members. We will have public conversation a little bit later, but I would like to hear from the committee members. Have you given this any thought? What are some of your thoughts or questions? Jane?
I know about Colonial Stores and Winston. What was the third store you said that was closing? I didn't hear that.
I believe I heard Gordon Optical.
West Concord.
Yeah, I know, yeah, Noah. Okay.
Yeah. John, do you want to comment on?
Well, I'll certainly comment. I think we need, if we're going to make an impact, I think we need to move at the municipal level rather than just the private level. And the fact that these businesses are in crisis has a lot to do with the fact that they've been shut down for the last 3 months. And we need now to provide help quickly. And again, the community chest is awesome. The block grant, fabulous, but it does feel like it's worth exploring kind of any option that we have at our disposal. And I've thought more about the proposal that Henry made at the last meeting. And to me, I realize that it's unusual, that no one else has done it, but it is creative and it seems to have potential. And I would, I would like to see the town actually, look into it in a very kind of, in a concrete kind of way, to actually, do some research, figure out, is this something that's feasible? It probably involves talking to town council. I mean, I'm sure there's some work that needs to be done. But in our charter, we are basically, our role, we don't actually do anything. We are meant to provide advice and suggestions to the select board. So my thought on this one is that if others think this is something worth pursuing, then it would be worthwhile putting in a, I'm not sure what the form this would take, but we should be advising the select board that this is something they should look into. And they may choose not to, fine. Or this group may decide it's not worth pursuing. But from my point of view, it appears to be the quickest way to a significant dollar volume to make a real impact in the business community and potentially help us avert what could be a disaster. If we really, again, it's hard to get data on the current state of actual businesses. And I'm here, we have Dawn here, we have Deborah here. We have, Ramon is now here. Cato, you're a business, but you're not really a retail business in the same sense. But I don't know really how many are going to go out of business. I've heard from one Concord Center retailer that she knows of at least 3 in Concord Center that are planning not to reopen. And I don't know who they are. Winston's maybe one of them. maybe Colonial Stores was the second. That would suggest there's a third. But once we have these vacancies, it becomes harder for the restaurants. It becomes harder to recover. And we saw that we had 3 vacancies in Concord Center for a while 47 Main Street was renovated and leased. And the thing I would hate to have happen is for these retail spaces to suddenly open up, be sitting vacant, and that just is really hard to recover from. So if there's anything that we can do as a town to help prevent that, the idea of extending low interest loans to merchants, to me, feels like a really smart idea. And it's something I would love to see the town actually invest some resource in exploring in a serious way.
I'd love to hear from
Can I speak to
Deborah.
that? Sorry, Jennifer.
Can I just run through the committee real quick then? And then Stephen, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Hang on one second. Deborah and Dawn, can you weigh in?
Sure, I don't see any downside to it. You know, what harm could come of them exploring it? It sounds like a wonderful opportunity and definitely an outside the box potential solution, at least steps in the right direction. So thank you, Henry. I missed your presentation 2 weeks ago, but I appreciate that you brought it to the committee and presented.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to suggest to the select board that they look further into it.
Deborah, do you have any thoughts? Deborah, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. So, I mean, I know of people who would like to stay open who may not be able to. And, you know, one of them is our tenant upstairs who we've gifted rent the last couple of months, but can't continue to keep gifting rent over and over and over again. And he will not be able to stay open unless he gets some help. So I think we're seeing, you know, we're getting to the point where it feels like the rug is being pulled out from us. And I think that the town has the capability, has a lot of smart, active people, Stephen being one of them, who can really make things happen quickly. And I would say that my concern has been watching the progress that we've been making is that we are being extremely cautious and slow. And I know there's a reason for that, but I also think now we need to step up and we need to make something happen like tomorrow. And I'd certainly love to have the town as a partner. Sometimes it feels that we're kind of at odds, and I would really love to see that partnership strengthened and embraced.
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to let us know where we are with this idea?
Sure. So I'll be direct and say that I don't feel like we're at odds at all. And I've come to these virtual meetings and talked about, you know, that we're trying everything we can. And so if we're at odds, it's because no matter what we try to do, we're not apparently doing enough. And you're right, Deb, that that there is a certain risk assessment that we do about these things. We did actually have bond counsel look at the idea of kind of doing a blanket borrowing to fund a loan pool, and their take was it's not lawful. So we did do that analysis, and I'll be candid. You know, I know this crisis is much more existential for local businesses. I'm completely aware of that. And where there are ways where we can exercise some local discretion, like especially like with outdoor dining, we're going to push that as much as we can. In fact, I just got off the select board where they approved the first outdoor dining application. And we use that process, which is brand new to us, to create an application that will distribute to the restaurant community so they know what they need to put together to apply for outdoor dining if they don't presently have it under the site plan. In terms of using the Civil Defense Act, a little used, not really tested law, even in an emergency situation, to appropriate money without town meeting approval, I think that that's some dangerous territory. And when we take actions, and you'll see in the restaurant application, for example, there are certain things that we require. Some of them the state requires us to require. Others we think is just good practice. It's because we need to make sure that we're not causing problems for both the businesses we're trying to help and the town when we come out of this. I'm quite sure, litigious people aren't taking the pandemic off. They're looking for gaps in liability that they can, operate in as well. And so we're trying to stay ahead of that. I'll give you an example. And then the other thing is, I've said this many times, the restaurant and business community needs to collaborate and kind of get, so everyone, not everyone, but there's a clear demand for a certain thing. We've been asked about closing streets. I have Concord Public Works in the process of researching and ordering barriers to try and make that happen. Not only barriers, we don't have a lot of them, we don't own a lot of them, but not only barriers to close streets, but barriers to provide separation from travel lanes and parking areas. So if we want to do outdoor dining or even outdoor retail sales in parking areas, we can try and make that happen. But you have to have those barriers to do that. You can't put tables in parking spaces and then have drivers just whizzing by. Cones aren't going to cut it. And so we are doing all these things kind of in the background to try and make sure we're ready when businesses come forward and say, this is what we need. But, there has to be a majority of businesses that want to close a street. If we close a street and end up destroying somebody's drive-up takeout business, well, that wasn't really a gain. And so I think that I look to all of you to say, figure out what kind of broad actions you want to see taken, and we'll do it. I mean, I know Acton is starting a grant or loan program using CARES funds, but I was specifically told that CARES money couldn't be used for that. So now I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out how we can use our CARES money for that purpose. Beth already talked about the CDBG CV thing that we're a part of regionally that we're looking to use. And like I said, we're trying to flatten the process for approvals for outdoor dining. So we're doing a lot. What I didn't hear in the proposal, quite honestly, is how taxpayers get protected in issuing loans, and that needs to be figured out. It is taxpayer money; it belongs to everybody. And while we want to provide financial assistance, there's got to be some kind of structure to do that, and that doesn't presently exist, except for the CDBG CV program that's being developed, and potentially the CARES Act program. But again, we're told it's not usable for business. So, I think it's. And the other thing, the last thing I'm going to leave it on is, I think that the 3 businesses that announced they're not reopening, that's sad, and I hope that doesn't continue. But I never heard from any of them, and I don't know if Beth did, but none of them reached out to say, if you get this for us, we could stay open, and that gives us something to kind of operate in. And like John, you said it, we need data, but we also need information, like anecdotes, like people that come to us and say, here's our problem, here's what we need to solve it. And if it's just money, we can work on that. But if it's, I need to block parking spaces for outdoor seating, like those are the specific things we can do. But setting up a loan pool really isn't that simple. And it really comes at the risk of all taxpayers, not just businesses. And so I'm trying to get a measure of support for the idea that we can help, we can and are helping in many other ways besides giving out money. And we're trying to help in that way, in a way that makes sense and protects the town, both the town corporation, but also town residents. So sorry.
Okay, Stephen, I can hear in your voice, and I can only imagine the pressure that your team has been under in an incredibly bizarre time in our town's history. Nobody here doubts that you guys aren't doing everything you can. The purpose of this committee is not to attack or undermine your work. It's simply to brainstorm other opportunities. And like John said, our goal here is to recommend things that we would think potentially could be helpful for the board to investigate or look into. So certainly know that is very different from any kind of a criticism or critique. I mean, you've done great work in making information available. Beth Williams has really been kind of the de facto help center for businesses. I think you raise a good point, though, in that the average shop owner who is probably under more stress than they've ever had in their lives might not even realize that they should or could call you or someone at the town. It probably comes down to conversations with landlords, with accounts payable, with employees, with unemployment, and, you know, perhaps there's a way to get the word out that, you know, there are additional resources, but we're all acting as quickly as we can. And those efforts aren't necessarily aligned in the same direction, not for want of doing so, but because it's quite chaotic at the moment. So I want to just reel us back for just a second, because we are going to dig deeper into the restaurant issue in just a minute. But back to the committee, it sounded to me like we would perhaps like to recommend that the select board investigate this proposal a bit further and see if there is anything to it, or if it could spark some similar ideas. Stephen's absolutely right. It's not our role to say do this, but would someone like to move to add this to our list of recommendations that we will provide out of today's meeting? No, we don't want to recommend that at this time. Dawn, you'd like to make that recommendation? Do I have a second? Oh, go ahead, Dawn.
No, just simply that, yes, I recommend
Okay.
that we present it to the select board to look into further.
Do I
Thank
have
you.
a second? Cato? Okay, great. Let's do a roll call vote on this one. I'll go through the board members and just say yay or nay. John? Can you unmute? Sorry. Yay, thumbs up. Okay.
Geez, I'm as bad as Deborah with the muting. My goodness, I apologize. Yay.
Okay. Jane?
We're voting on whether or not the town should just look into this a little bit more.
Yes, we're voting to recommend that they investigate this and assess it.
Okay. I'm a little confused because I thought that Stephen said they had looked into it.
As far as I'm aware, I don't think the select board has thoroughly investigated Henry's exact proposal. I think what I heard is that they've looked into bond issuance, but his proposal actually ties to the Civil Defense Act under a time of emergency as a potential way to be able to issue low interest loans through a bond. So we're voting on whether or not we want to recommend to the select board that they investigate this option.
Sure. Okay.
So that's a yay?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, Deborah?
Yay.
Okay, Don?
Yes, yay.
Beth?
No.
Okay. Cato?
Yay.
Okay. I think that's everybody who votes, right?
Mark Martinez.
Where's Mark? Oh, hey, Mark.
I joined late, sorry, yes.
Sorry, didn't see, there's a lot of people on here today. Okay, Ruth,
Hey,
did you,
Steve, yeah, I vote, I guess, with some reservation, but they can explore it.
okay. Ruth, did you get all of those?
I did not get Cato or Mark.
Okay, they both said yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, don't forget yourself.
Oh, yes, I'd like to vote yes, to explore it, yes. Okay, thank you, everyone, much appreciated. Okay, so now, if we still have Stephen with us, yes, hi, Stephen's still here. We'd love to hear, I know your team has been working incredibly hard over the last couple of weeks. Could you give us a general update on where the progress that has been made, both with reopening the retail shops and also maybe give us some details around some of the restaurant initiatives that are moving forward?
Sure. So on the retail shops, obviously, I think that is a phase that we have not necessarily hit yet from the governor's 4-phase plan. The restaurant guidance came out last week, I believe. Like I said, we had our town council look at it to make sure we understand it. Like I said, there are certain aspects, the big one is the select board does have to approve it if it wasn't a part of your original site plan. There are some for whom outdoor dining was a part of their site plan. Main Street Cafe is one of them, just as an example. But 80 Thor Road did not have outdoor dining as a part of the original site plan, so they had to apply for select board approval. The good news is the board can extend the service of alcohol into those new outdoor dining areas without ABCC approval or the hearing notifications or abutters notices. So they've made it very easy during this time to set up outdoor seating and be able to serve alcohol so long as it's contiguous to the restaurant. And you have to have your COVID serving plans, and you have to have a bunch of other check boxes that the state requires. And those are going to be in that checklist that we're going to give out. And you also have to have kind of the ABCC, you have to follow the ABCC guidance for serving on patios. The big thing is, and I think we distributed a memo, or at least I showed one that Marsha Rasmussen had put together, that showed kind of aerial photos of all the restaurants in town and who's got parking and who doesn't. And this is the thing, for those who don't have parking areas, contiguous to them and would need to use the street, we really need to get together with them and their neighbors to talk about taking away parking and putting in some barriers, like I said, that we have on order to start that process. And then, there are some insurance things that you have to work out. And just to be honest, it's if a car driving down the street plows into a table full of diners at somebody's outdoor dining, that's a pretty bad deal for everybody all around, and you need to plan for that ahead of time. Hopefully you never need it. So we sent out, like I said, we sent out an email to all the restaurateurs. We had I think a well-attended meeting Friday afternoon. I think many of them, based on the feedback I got about some questions, some pretty specific questions, I think folks are just starting to kind of get their heads around the guidance and what it needs. And so I think if you are thinking that way and you have a parking lot contiguous, one of the things that we're trying to do is get not only, kind of Jersey style barriers, but also the kind of fence, like metal grate ones that would be good for use in separating patrons from vehicles and parking lots, to make those available for people to use. And then also have the Jersey barriers for any dining that's potentially in the right of way. So
Stephen, I'm sorry, which parking lots are you thinking of?
Anyone that has, if you have a restaurant and it has even a back door contiguous to it, I think the biggest thing you're going to have though is, and these are all part of the state guidelines that the governor has put out. These aren't local control issues. These are state guidance. You have to have clear pathways to bathrooms, hand washing stations, ways to keep, patrons separate from, they've made it easier to get permission, but there are still a lot of things you need to do to make sure you're ready to do it. And I think that's key. And everyone has to, as I said to everyone's shop is different. Everyone's layout is different. And so each person really needs to, and we can be here to help and support and review and give you the checklist and kind of talk you through it, like we did for 80 Thoreau, who was really they were really the first one to come forward with the meaningful proposal with details, and we called a special meeting of the select board and got them through in like 48 hours. We can't do it any faster than that. And so if you're in the situation, you're interested in doing it, let us know, but you really have to come up with your own COVID plans that comply with the state's guidelines, because your own operations the best, and where you can get hand sanitizing stations and hand wash stations, so all things are required. We'll review it for you before you formally submit it. We can have Susan Rask. She says, or Gabby White. Most of the restaurateurs know them from inspections. We'll take a look at what you're putting together and try and help talk you through it. But it's a customized plan. So, I think it's something everybody wants. The weather's getting nice. We want to be able to use these authorities given to us by the governor to the greatest effect possible. And like I said, as soon as I have better information on those barriers, I'll let folks know that they're available, because that's not something for a business to go out and buy them for 3 months of outdoor dining operation that'll cease when the emergency goes away. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're trying to provide that. In terms of the funding stuff, like I said, I think it's going to be a little bit, unfortunately, like the federal government side, where the program gets announced and it takes a little bit for the money to follow. And I think I need to reiterate, you're right, Jennifer, a lot of businesses that are having this, as I said, existential crisis, livelihood at stake, may not know that they can talk. They probably didn't know who the heck I am, but they may not know that they can come to the town and see if there's some kind of way we can provide some relief. But all of you know that we can. So I think it's important for you and Concord together to help us bridge that gap with outreach. And like I said, the last thing is getting everyone to try and work together and communicate amongst each other as a business community. I mean, the easiest things for us to say yes to are 4 shops on a block saying, can you block off all our parking, put up barriers so we can all offer services in these parking spaces? I mean, that's the easiest thing because we can say yes, and there's not, if one business asks for it and we go out there and set up the barriers, and then the business next door, says, hey, that's going to ruin me. We can't be in that position. So it's important for people to come together with shared proposals that we can implement and support. And so that's the stage we're at. Is we need to. The stuff is out there. The guidance is out there. Now, how do we work together to come up with actions that make sense?
So, Stephen, you're saying that, for example, on Walden Street, if a restaurant got together with the shops on either side of them and they could come to an agreement that everyone's cool with blocking 4 or 5 parking spaces in a row that could then be explored as an opportunity for outdoor dining, you'd be more inclined to hear that, knowing that the neighbors were in support of it?
I'm saying no. It would make it very easier for us to say yes. We want to hear all the ideas, but and we want to say yes as often as possible. But it would make it easier to say yes if we knew that everyone wanted the same thing. I mean, I've heard from one restaurant on a particular block. I won't mention it now, but they said, "Hey, can I block parking spaces because I've got a vibrant drive-up takeout business?" And if we block that, if we block those spaces for something else, that impacts them. The other thing I'm going to throw out there is, we're ready to block off Main Street for maybe a once a week Saturday night block party. Block the street off and give everybody the opportunity to set up, or Comm Ave. I mean, you all can pick the street. We're ready to make that happen. But we have to make sure we're doing it for people that are actually for businesses that really want that to happen. And I know I've only been here a short while, but the stuff I've seen in the special events that I've attended, the participation isn't always across the board. And I think we need broad participation because we don't want to prevent access to something. And so is this something the restaurant or retail community is interested in pursuing? But we're ready, we're ready to do that.
Well, that's incredibly helpful to hear, Stephen, because there's an example where the Concord Together initiative could hop on that opportunity, do some quick survey work, or reach out, more proactively to the folks in those particular geographic areas, and maybe try to complement your work by gathering that support together. It's really great to hear that.
And the other thing I want to say is and this is not intended, it's not intended to sound defensive or as an excuse. I think we are trying as hard as we can. I look at some of the other communities and it seems like they've done things that may seem to be more ahead of ours. I think organization-wide, there are a lot of communities that aren't offering summer camps and aren't opening their beaches. We're doing that. So, I mean, every town is approaching response to the pandemic in its own way. But, Beth Williams, God bless her, it's only her sense of purpose that has her doing all of this kind of economic development work, because she's not the economic vitality coordinator, because that's in the FY21 budget that has not been approved. And so, I just got here, and in my first budget, I said, geez, we really need somebody who can be a go-to for economic vitality, economic development concerns. A lot of other communities have somebody who's already doing that full time. And so I think, Jennifer, it's fair to say that we're playing catch up on this. I do think that's fair, but there's pretty specific reasons why we're playing catch up. And like I said, I think Beth is doing a great job, and we're getting support from across the organization, not the least of which is the select board that I know has the expectation that I will listen to and take care of local business as much as I possibly can.
Well, that's great. And, I think to that end also, Stephen, that's why some of these private initiatives should definitely, as much as possible, step in. But it's really good to hear what they can be doing to support you. So thank you for that update. Are there any other comments or inputs on how things are going with the reopening? Deborah, I'd love to hear from you. You've been open all along. Are you noticing any shifts now that that sort of first tentative steps towards reopening are happening? And what should this committee maybe be thinking about in response to that?
I'm happy to address that, but I want to point out that Verrill Farm has also been open the whole time, and I think maybe a couple of others here too. But yes, in the beginning there was panic buying, and then we learned about implementing, putting things in place. And right now we're seeing a precipitous drop in shopping in the, we're not seeing the online shopping, and it nearly killed us to get online shopping cart open in a week or so, which we'd never had before. But this past Monday, it was as if somebody had flipped a lever, as if all of Concord is emptying out and going to Maine or going to the Cape for the summer. So we have really noticed a drop in sales, and at the same time, our staff who are sheltering at home are all coming back. So we now, today, for instance, we were really overstaffed, and we're trying to make things normal for our staff, and we didn't send anyone home. But is that what you wanted to know, Jennifer, dear?
It's actually very important to hear that.
Yeah.
So there's another sort of level to the crisis, which is the normal Concordian pattern of the great exodus to the beach.
Yeah.
So it's another challenge.
And we paid, we've been paying our staff hazard pay and doing all the normal things, but we also had offered everyone who had stayed through this another 2-week salary, which we paid in May as well. So, everything, our finances took a hit, but we're still in business, we're still alive, we're still kicking, and that's what counts. I feel we're so much luckier than others out there.
Steve, what has your experience been like so far?
Well, quite similar. We felt lucky to be open, and we had a good couple months earlier, but the volume has dropped off now. In the beginning, the orders were much larger than normal, and the traffic was about 50 or 60%. And now the traffic has picked up very little, and the size orders have dropped back near normal. So we're sliding back a little as we go ahead. A lot of people still are afraid to come out, and then we're limited to the number of customers we can have in the store, and sometimes we have to make people wait outside. And as we get into strawberry season, it's going to be a problem to sell the number of quarts of strawberries we usually do if more people can't go through the store. And coming to pick your own, we're supposed to limit the people in the field to 114 people per acre, which is going to take a little doing. So there are complications, but we're lucky to be alive.
Yeah. And I think getting clear, consistent messages is hard because none of us have been through this before. So we're all learning together. But I remember the day Gabi called, and it took me by surprise because there I was scooping bulk for someone and saying, you have to put yellow, do not touch things over the bulk bins. And I think the state just said there also now can be no bulk cleaning supplies. And we had just launched a program where people are bringing their own containers. But there are so many things that are different when you look around the country. So I was online and I was looking at, oh gosh, I forgot the name, one of the large supermarket chains in the country. And they actually have fought and gone to battle to allow people to use their own recyclable bags, because they said the scientific studies determined that that is not dangerous, particularly if people will bag their own. So you get different takes on things from all over the country and from every town. And it's just, I want God to come down and give one message.
That would be great.
Deborah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was doing the plan for the visitor center with regard to brochures. So I now have a laminated poster from the science, from a science journal saying paper from brochures is not proven to be a transmittable way of getting COVID-19, but please, if you touch one, take one, So I hear ya, and it's from all different places.
Yeah.
Dawn, have you opened your doors yet?
So we're not yet open to the public. We have had staff back in and have been doing curbside since after Memorial Day, which is really nice to have that, to have people in the store again. And we're all getting used to the new protocols, getting used to being with each other before we open the doors, which I think will happen next week. One of my biggest barriers remains getting adequate cleaning supplies. I don't want to open only to have to close because I can't.
Dawn, you can talk to me. I
right.
shared our recipes for our sanitizing solution and all of that. And I actually had the Concord Lamp and Shade come in and, I gave them a discount on some of the things that they needed. And they had already gotten some other supplies themselves. So just ask.
Yep, I saw your memo and your recipe, so I will follow up with that, Deborah. Hand sanitizer is another thing. Do you have a recipe?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And for doing shopping carts and baskets, we're using just pure 99% isopropyl alcohol that we got from an animal hospital in California. That's the only place we could get it way back when.
Wow.
So anyway, I think a soft opening, probably Monday or Tuesday next week.
Right.
But it's good to see people waving through the window.
Stephen, did you have something?
Yeah, I think so. What we're finding out for both PPE and for cleaning supplies is that the supply chains are catching up. It's still, maybe a week out, whereas before this you could get it in 2 days. We have we're pretty well stocked, and so if you're in a jam and you're about to run out, let us know. We'll see if we can take some out of the town's strategic hand sanitizer reserve. We can see if we can put together a little kit for you to get you through.
Yeah, I actually we have another vendor that we've been working with to get it. So I have jugs of sanitizer now, as well as we rented stations for the public buildings. So if your sources don't fall through or anything, just let me know. We also are using, a lot of the cleaning surfaces are using just a bleach diluted for the areas that are not in contact with food. Obviously that doesn't work with places that are food, but that is an EPA approved source. And I have some other sources now that we've come to. So,
if you just let Beth or I know what you need, I'm happy to get it and bring it to your location. So you don't have to try and figure out how to get into town buildings, which remain closed.
Yep.
Okay. John, are there any other items you want to make sure the committee addresses before we open up to public comment?
I don't think so. I think this has been a good discussion. And I guess my one thought I have is that we keep identifying areas where we need more data, need better information. I think this is something we should ask Concord Together to try to mobilize on in the next few days. And it would be helpful to that. And, Beth, perhaps you could give some ideas, the kind of information that would be helpful to you and the town to have to, help you, know where to focus your resources or know where to kind of focus your attention. So if there are specific, data points or questions or anecdotes we want to hear, let's see if Concord Together can mobilize to gather that information. Because I think without that kind of data, it's really hard to know, where to focus. And so I think it would be kind of cool if we could come back in 2 weeks and have some data from Concord Together to share on, the current state of small business in Concord.
Yep. Okay.
So I just asked Ramon, did you want to add anything, Ramon, in terms of your experience kind of reopening for, I guess you're not doing lunch anymore, but what's going on with your Concord shop?
So I was going to wait till public comment, or I can do it now. We were closed for about a month right in the beginning because really early on we saw that the volume was not there. Then we reopened and we did really well that first weekend, and things just kind of tapered off as kind of like everyone was discussing. So currently we're only doing dinner from 4 to 8 on the weekdays and 4 to 9 on Fridays and Saturdays. And it's definitely a struggle. The volume is not there as it should be, and we're hanging on. We'll get through this, but I think that there are going to be a number of vacancies, unfortunately, and the survival of I think the town center is so important because that vibrancy and the, everything that it can bring to the community is I can't overstate it. But yeah, as far as business, I own a business in a number of different communities, so we're and I've seen a number of different approaches, and I don't want this to be a confrontational situation as far as what you could do and what you haven't done, or what the town hasn't done. But there are definitely different approaches, and I think that the town is opened on the 8th, right? So today's already the 10th, and we're just way behind. It's really, I think, people don't know what they don't know. So if it's hard to put the onus on anybody to say, well, you come up to us with a plan, where there should be an application, there should be some sort of guidance, a checklist, something that's been put out there for us to use. And then, yes, if there's things above and beyond that, then we can go from there. But I guess I'll wait for the public comment to really get into that a little bit more.
Well, is that something that maybe makes sense for the town to explore, is to quickly come up with a one-sheet checklist of what should be included?
Yep, it's already done. So we've just had, we're on our second round of it right now. The police chief just checked off on it. Health department checked off. Stephen and I both made some little changes. I expect it'll be posted within the next 24 hours. It has the application, which is going to be free, and a checklist, which is really thorough. It's about 20 steps, and it's a single point application. So all the applications are going to go directly to Jeremy. So you don't have to go to more than one department. They're emailed. And they will be up on the town website and sent out through the business partnership and the chamber and the town. I expect within a day or so, Stephen. We're pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty much ready to go. Actually, while we were on the call, I got it back from town council for review. So we'll just tidy that up and have it out tomorrow.
Great.
That's great news. Wonderful.
So I have a question about that form, Beth, that you're talking about. Is that to be part of our plans that we've already written, or is that an addendum to?
Nope, you just attach it. So it'll be a one-page application, your name and information. You attach your scope to it and make sure you hit all the check boxes.
Okay.
The intent, yeah. I mean, the state has to talk about. I mean, the guidance for restaurants. It's the state that has most of the requirements. They're not local requirements. The state is the one that's requiring all this.
We just put it all together in one application,
Right.
so you can go through it really easily, check off the boxes, you know where to go, links to the mass.gov information, the CDC information. Draw us a little plan with what you want, and we'll fast track it as quick as we can.
That's great.
Good.
Okay, well, I want to make sure we've got a lot of members of the public with us here. You're not all on camera, so I can't necessarily see who's raising their hands. I'd like to do this as organized as possible. So let's see. Okay, it's really just Ralph and Nick that hi, Ralph. All right, do we have any members of the public who would like to make a comment, suggestion, idea, etc.?
Jen, if you don't mind, can I just make a quick point? And then I have a hard stop at 5 o'clock because I'm running the restaurant at the moment.
Okay.
First of all, having been, here working for Ramon for the last couple of years in Concord, I've fallen in love with this community. I love it here. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and this is by far and away my favorite assignment I've ever had in my career. So the community's doing, everything they can. We feel that. Stephen, thank you. The only thing is it's frustrating in seeing what some other communities have already done to pull one out of the thin air, like in Waltham, closing Moody Street, one of the busiest roadways in that community. And I've run restaurants in Waltham. So what we're looking for is just clear-cut guidance on, what are the steps to get going, and we would have liked to have already done so, but I'm going to jump off and let Ramon, pipe in. I'm sure he has much more lucid thoughts than I do, but we really do appreciate everything you do and everything you're going to do. We just want to be a vibrant member of the community for as long as we can, and we need to get some outdoor seating to make that happen. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ralph. Good to hear you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of food tonight. Susan?
Hi, I'm sorry I was late to the meeting, but did you already discuss the Community Chest grant program?
Yes,
Okay,
we did.
I'll catch up on the tape then. Thank you.
Yes, Ramon?
So do you mind if I just, a couple of things. Before I, go on about the, opportunities for the restaurant, I obviously have a very specific perspective of the industry, right? So everything I say is probably going to be, based on the restaurant industry. So I apologize for that. I know that there's other businesses that are affected in that, it's hard to have something that works for everybody. Unfortunately, my thoughts aren't as lucid these days because of all the stress and volatility of everything that we deal with on a daily basis. But to Ralph's point, but one thing that I think from an economic perspective that if we're trying to do, it's not going to move the needle, but we pay, there's a 7% meals tax that is collected. 6.25% goes to the state, and the 3/4 of that goes back to the towns. It's not a lot of money, but I think that the town could give that back to the restaurants. We're fighting for pennies right now, and every dollar counts. So I think that's a gesture that is kind of low-hanging fruit that you guys can bring to the board potentially and have that, or the council I should say, and have that given back in some way, or a fund to use as grants for the industry. Maybe people can apply for it. I don't know, some way that some of that money could be used in better use, because it's there, and the town has a discretion to use that 0.75%, or to collect that, I should say, or not. Most towns have opted in for that, but I'm sure you guys have talked about property tax and things like that in the past, but one of the things that I think that from a town's perspective, yes, every business is different, but there's municipal public areas that could easily have been opened up to, picnic benches or just for having people a space for them to eat outdoors. Yes, I understand closing business streets and having parking spaces taken over is a very different conversation, very specific, but other towns that I've been in and I've been involved in, yes, Waltham is one extreme, shutting down streets, but other ones we've had applications available and ready. So on the 8th, we were open, right? It's the 10th, we still don't have an application. And this is not trying to, be antagonizing or to come down on you, but this is serious. Every day counts. Our businesses are on the verge. And to think that we have the funds and the money available to even do half of the stuff that the town is asking for, is a bit naive as well. I mean, we don't have the ability to pay our people, but yet how are we going to provide all this infrastructure, let alone, potential drawings that we might need from architects to get the spacing. We run this business and we provide, the sanitation and safety to all our guests on a daily basis. That's what we do. That's what we do well. And we do it, with hospitality, but, to extend a little bit of the ability to, I understand you're cutting all the red tape, but for us to there's just a low hanging fruit there with public spaces that may not benefit, all the restaurants that people could have used by now. And that should have been open. And, whether you can drink publicly out there or not is a different conversation. The town can vote, but at least just grab some takeout, go sit down. This outdoor seating is just a small part of it because it's not enough. It's so finicky with the weather. We've had a patio in one of my locations for years, and being able to see people outside and the investment that we have to make with not only patio furniture, but barriers and things like that are not easy, to make happen and to make happen quickly. So now we're into this, we have to still go through the process and get accepted from the town, right? First of all, we have to get the application in a day or two. Then it's gonna take another couple of days, to get accepted. Then we got to get the patio furniture. You're talking, right now everybody's backed up. So by the time we do all that, we've just missed so much potential there to be able to provide, not just for the businesses, but for the community as well, who's obviously, looking forward to having the ability to go out there. So I think that I'm happy to have these conversations directly to be able to, give some insight, because I've had this conversation a couple of weeks ago now in other communities and, and we've been open. So, it's easy to take an application from another town and maybe obviously every town is different, but to use that as a template or as an outline and just have something to go off of. So if there's something that I can do to help, there's specific, requirements that the state has, but we need some guidance and some leadership from the local level to say, this is what you need to get done, provide us this information, and we'll get you to vote on it right away. It's as easy as that, and I know that there's a stressful time, but it's stressful for all of us. I mean, we're not only, trying to maintain our livelihood, but also maintain the health and safety of our team and our guests, right? So this is something that's affects all of us. Sorry, that's good.
No, don't be sorry. It's a really valid point.
Thank you, Ramon.
Just one quick thing on 80th Rose. It was a hand-drawn sketch, not an architect's plan, and so people should know you can just take some graph paper and a pen and a ruler and get that done. And like you said, if you look at their packet from the select board meeting tonight, the stuff that you have to do for the state is much more rigorous than anything we're requiring locally. So I hear you, and that's what we're trying to do, but we only control part of it.
No, I get it. And again, how do we know that though? How would we know where every other opportunity, every other time we've had to, comply with certain regulations and saying that, yes, some communities are letting us draw something on the back of a napkin, which is great. But again, without having the guidance and some sort of communication to let us know that this is all you need and don't worry about it, we don't know where to start. And some people, again, some people have the ability and fortunate enough to have been in other communities or the resources to have started it, but other people are still waiting for that. I'm only speaking for a small group, but there's a lot of other smaller businesses, as you just heard, there's 45 just restaurants and, food businesses, in Concord that don't know, what to do or how to approach it. And they're just looking for that guidance. So I appreciate the clarifying that, we can just draw it out and be able to present something.
Yeah, we just got a second application that's going on next week's select board too. Paparazzi just applied as well. So, none of the restaurants have asked me directly. So, and I am getting calls from the chamber. Jane is sending me calls, Kate's sending me calls. So neither 80 Thoreau or the paparazzi asked. So they must have asked somebody. I'm not sure who, whether they called the town manager's office, but I haven't, nobody's asked me for the application. So it'll be ready tomorrow. We'll get it up there as fast as we can. And I would bet mostly the restaurants probably already have a lot of this stuff done because they've had to do them just to be able to do curbside. I'm hoping.
I agree. Listen, with all due respect, to expect like saying that you haven't been asked, a lot of people don't know how to get in contact with you, and a lot of people don't know what to ask. They need to have some sort of ability, as you just found out. You go to the the website and nobody knows how to where your email even is listed over there. So there's no question that some people have been proactive and on their own, which is great, and I applaud them for it. But some of us maybe are a little more ignorant in that sense, and we just need that ability to understand what we need to do. And it being you have the list available, you have all the restaurants, just send out an email, let us know, and the application, just like other towns have done, and that has gotten sent out, and we have them, we fill it out, and we submit it, we go through that process, and it's pretty seamless. I mean, obviously there's every town has some little small quirks that they might have to be different, but again, just people don't know how to get in touch with somebody or what they need to have in store to do that.
Hi, Dawn, go ahead.
Hi, Jennifer, thanks. On a similar vein, somebody earlier said, you don't know what you don't know, and we're all drowning in emails. But I found out last week, my husband went to get a haircut because the barbershop's finally opened, and he came back and he said, did you know there's no feeding the meter in town? And I had no idea that had been waived. And I wonder, number one, if that will continue. And number two, maybe I'm sensing a theme of maybe we need some more broadcast messages, just simple one sentence type things of, I would welcome, knowing that my customers, when they come back, don't have to feed a meter, or something, hey, restaurants, food service people, this is happening and here's who you contact. So, not deep paragraphs, but maybe one-liners going out. And I know Jane sends us a lot of stuff, and I know there's a wealth of information on the town website, but that needs us to go in and look for something and to know that the answer might be there. So perhaps when something changes or there's a something worth noting, I don't mind another email. I can, use it or file it.
And
Sorry, the big thing is news and notices. The best thing you can do is subscribe for news and notices through our town website, because and follow us on social media, because we send out one-liners all the time, including parking fees are suspended during the state of emergency.
So Jane, can you send that out to everybody? I didn't subscribe to that. So maybe we all need a reminder. Anybody who's on Jane's email list then can get an invitation.
I have to admit, I didn't see that one. I read most of the messages from the town, but I missed that one myself. So I apologize. I would have sent that out if I had known it, but I will look through those. Maybe Beth, you can send that one to me and I'll distribute it, because that is good information.
You got it.
Sorry, one other thing as far as financially, we've all paid, our permitting, licensing fees for the entire year, and a lot of businesses have been shut down. Maybe if there's any proposal or opportunity to credit back or to do some sort of adjustment or, something on those, is, again, it's might not be a lot of money, but it's a small thing for little independent businesses that can make a difference, that we've paid, for, time that we haven't used. I do think, to somebody's point, it is a PR issue as well. There's a lot of education that needs to happen with the public, as well as businesses in the community to really understand, what we're dealing with, and, from landlords all the way down to the consumer, and really understanding like that consistent messaging and what they can expect. They don't have to pay meters. Our businesses are open, and there's just a really, I think, a lot of confusion to, again, a couple people's point about what's happening out there and how we all are getting that information. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to do, I don't know about public service announcements, but something like that, where there's some outreach or marketing efforts, that the city can also do to help, kind of partner with us as a business community.
This Jane, one of the challenges, this past week before the opening, or actually on Monday, I sent out an email to a number of people to try to find out what they were doing. And I have to admit, the responses trickled in. And the most consistent response I did get was from the hotels. And there are only a limited number of hotels and inns in Concord, so that was relatively easy. But I think it does, listening to this conversation, the needs of each of the businesses appear to be quite different, and I've always have been different. And some of them may need the tax on food as a reduction. Others may need the parking meters. Another group may need something else. Rent. It's hard to know, and I don't know. I know that we've talked about this earlier, but trying to get a better handle on what needs going forward will be the most critical to each of the business types. It's something I think, John, you said earlier. I mean, it just seems, listening to all of you, that it's critical to understand that, yet we don't fully know what those needs are.
Very true. I thought that was an interesting idea, Ramon, about potentially exploring some sort of rebate or forgiveness of the permits and licensing for the time period that the restaurants had to be closed. I don't know what the feasibility around that is, but perhaps that's something that we can explore. I'm hearing a very strong common thread, and we've heard this before, around the need for data and the need for consistent communication. And I think that begins with, as silly as it sounds, an accurate list of every business in this town, the business owner, and their correct contact information. Beth, I know you and I have talked about, how we can start that process, but I'm really hearing a sense of urgency around that.
I had to fill out a form for the fire department. I don't know if everybody else did, if that is something the fire department has a list of, but it's, it's sort of emergency contact if you have a situation at your office during after hours, or for the police. I can't remember which one it was for, but I don't know if that's something that they have.
That was for the police.
For the police, yeah. So I don't know if that was reached, how many people that reached.
I apologize. I have to go.
Okay.
My granddaughter just arrived. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you. Hi, Mira.
Hey.
Hi.
Yeah,
You're gonna say hello to everyone. Hello. It's okay. Say hello. And now we're gonna say, go leave meeting. Here we
Adorable. Okay, well, I think it's probably time for us to wrap up our meeting today.
Jennifer, I have one question.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
So, so if I hear you correctly, it sounds like we're going to reach out through the business partnership, through Concord Together, through the chamber for more data. Is that right?
Yes.
And I guess the question is, when we're asking people for data, I suspect we should probably ask them for anecdotal stories or issues they've had as far as challenges that might be able to be addressed that would make their reopening smoother as part of that. Then I guess the question is, how do we channel that information? Is it channeled to this committee, then to the select board and Stephen, or is it quicker to Stephen, or what's the right channel of coordination of communication? Both good and bad information, Stephen. I mean, it's the things are great, but I wish the town would do A, B, and C.
Can I answer that, Jennifer?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. And I mean, the thing about, I've been in government for more than 20 years, and no agency of government or no division of government has invented a way to communicate with the public that everybody gets. And so we obviously need to keep trying harder in that regard. But I think it speaks to one of the persistent gaps in how government gives out information versus how information is given out in kind of the modern paradigm, where the traditional model of government is we make it available for you, and now everything gets pushed to you, gets pushed to your phone. And so the paradigms of information sharing between how government is built, based on laws that are hundreds of years old, and how we communicate in a modern sense, especially when you're trying to market yourself, they're just so different. And we're trying to figure out a better way to do that. But in terms of like specific needs and anecdotes and things like that, you can send them directly to Beth and I, and we can be in a position to say, not only to log it, but also say, okay, well, here's what we can do to figure out. I think the other thing is, if you're in a retail business, Ramon, I'm looking at you, talk to your neighbors on Walden Street and find out, do they want to have a block party? Do they want to close off parking spaces? Then you email me, we're in contact, and say, hey, listen, I've talked to my neighbors, create a group email thread and say, hey, we all want to do this. How do we get it done? And then we'll get it done. And I think that's the type of two-way feedback. I mean, part of the problem, I'll be honest with you, is I just haven't been here long enough to know enough people to really have a better understanding. And I'm sorry for that. I tried hard to get out and meet people, and then we were told we couldn't get out and meet people, pretty shortly into my tenure. And so part of that my newness is really a disadvantage in this moment, because I don't have the relationships with many people in the community. So Mark, to get a long answer to your short question, funnel the information for us, and then we can bring it back to the committee and say, here's what we've received, and here's what we're working on, here's what we think we need you to do, and here's what we're going to recommend to the select board, and build it that way.
Okay, that's great. Similar to the I guess metaphorical, if there are 3 properties on the line and they could coordinate and sort of agree that they'd love to court off the road for some period of time. I think there are, just pick restaurants as a group. I think there may be situations where people are having common challenges. So maybe we can, again, metaphorically say, we've talked to these 5 restaurants, and this looks like it's a common theme that we'd really hope you can, work with them to figure out. So, but thank you.
I do want to just say something in defense of Beth and Stephen. We exchanged some emails this morning. It is very difficult, I found, to get consensus on certain issues, and that, especially among the retail group, there are times when they want to do something, but when push comes to shove, their business needs are quite different. So when you actually get to a planning stage, there are different things come out. And so it is difficult to get everybody around closing a street for a week or for a night. It's very difficult to close for an afternoon. It sounds great, but businesses have very different needs. And some of them really like the foot traffic and they don't want it closed down because that's the nature of their business, while others do like the party nature of it. So it's a tough challenge, at least what I've experienced in Concord. And it's not always so clear cut the direction to take, just in support of what they're doing. It's just been my experience as well.
If I could just, sorry, Jen, just to build on that point with an anecdote, and the reason why it sounds like I'm pushing back, but encouraging businesses to work together for shared solutions that are the easiest to implement. The public spaces and picnic tables and things like that were brought up. The intent of the takeout was not to take out and eat it on a bench or at a picnic table next to the restaurant. It was take it home. And so some restaurants were enjoying higher traffic because they had a picnic table and a public space next to them. And then others that weren't in proximity contacted us and complained the fact that this other restaurant was getting this advantage of this public space, and we had to close it. And this is, and like I said, I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to give you a snapshot into the factors that we're trying to juggle, which if you all sorted that out on you before it got to us, we'd say, okay, great. Everyone agrees. Mm-hmm. All picnic tables should be open regardless of what restaurant the next, then we do it. Like that's kind of an anecdote to illustrate the point of the challenges we have. And when shared problems come up, it's very easy to fix them.
I think the challenge though is who leads the assembly of those shared solutions. I think that's what I'm hearing. John, did you have a comment? We do need to.
Yeah, I was just going to say that just listening to the dialogue today, these are not easy times. These are not easy questions. I mean, we're talking about people's livelihoods here, right? And so this is not always comfortable, but I just want to say thank you to Beth and Stephen in particular for coming to these calls. I'm not sure that was originally envisioned that you would be coming to all of these things, Stephen. So I hope you keep coming though, because it's direct dialogue and it's helpful. And I think as a committee, we just, we're doing what we think we have to do to raise the issues and push the issues where we see there are, glimmers of hope. Susan, it's also incredibly helpful to have you here as well. And I just wanted to ask before we wrap, do you have any feedback on how the committee is this style of conversation helpful to you, and how should we be delivering our recommendations to the select board? Because again, we report to you technically. So how would you like to see us do that? You weren't here at the beginning of the meeting. I forget when you joined, but we talked about, basically understanding Stephen's not, he sees a number of issues with the proposal that Henry Dane came up with around creating a loan facility for local businesses. I think the feeling of the committee is that it's something that maybe it won't work out, but it's certainly, there's no harm in trying a little bit harder to look into it and see if there's something that could work there for businesses. How should we be going out delivering these recommendations to the select board?
Well, I think you can address them to me and I can share them with the board. I'm sorry I missed the part about the grant or the community chest fund, because that seemed to me to be a fabulous public private combination to allow people to, and I was curious about, and I'll dig into it and find out the criteria and how you're going to award those funds, and how that in some ways is that, that's another source of revenue for businesses, which is terrific. But I think we've heard the message clearly today about relooking at the Henry Dane's proposal. And going forward, I think my presence, and Stephen is probably going to be hanging in here for a while because he's the kind of the source of a lot of the information that we get. But I'm happy to have them come through me, but not kind of on maybe on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, kind of assemble things. Now that doesn't apply to now, as Ramon was saying, that time is critical. So I'm happy to have one of you co-chairs kind of collect what you think, and then I can present it to the select board and to the town manager if he hasn't, although you probably all have already heard.
and possibly acted. But that would work. And I do want to remind you, this is off topic, but tomorrow is election day. So please, if you haven't voted early, you can go, everyone goes to the high school this year, all precincts. So just a plug for
Even
that.
I think that would be a good use of your telephonic powers. I think a lot of people have forgotten tomorrow's election day. So a reminder would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good idea. I will, I can do it. I can actually do one from this very chair.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, John. I will do that.
All right, well, being mindful of everyone's time, first I want to really thank you all for a very productive, if difficult, conversation. I think we've got a lot of good action items out of here. Certainly we will carry these messages to the Concord Together group, which meets Thursday morning. So anyone who would like to attend that, you can just reach out and we'll get you that information. Can I have a motion to adjourn for today, please?
So moved.
Okay, second. Cato, thank you. Okay, and I'm going to do a verbal roll call just to make life a little easier for Ruth. So I vote aye. John?
Aye.
Jane?
Who, aye? Who'd you say?
Jane?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Cato?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And did I forget anybody? I don't think so.
Yourself.
She voted first.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all so very, very much. And have a lovely evening and order takeout from your favorite restaurants. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For everyone. Bye-bye.
Aye.
Thank you.